On today's show, the government has thought of a new EV scheme, annoying changes to make parking more harder, and someone who should be in prison for a very long time but for some reason isn't. Let's begin. Okay, let's start off with EVs first. The article says that a new government scheme is aiming to unlock the potential of smart electric vehicle charging, helping owners of EVs to save hundreds every year on their energy bills. And the government has said that the smart charging scheme will help motorists charge their EVs when the electricity is cheaper. I'm pretty sure they do that already, but apparently drivers can also use the electric stored in their EVs to power their own homes, allowing them to benefit from lower electricity bills. And as a further bonus, the government scheme will also allow customers to sell electricity from their vehicles back to the national grid for profit. With the ban now on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars being introduced in 2030, the smart charging plan aims to further encourage more drivers to make a switch to electric. The report states that the average electric vehicle driver could save around £200 a year, and a high mileage driver could apparently save up to £1,000 a year with the introduction of smart charging across the UK. The government is aiming to make smart charging commonplace for EV drivers by 2025. And Tim Alcock of leaseelectriccar.co.uk, shameless plug for you there, said by reducing the demand for electricity, such as pumping electricity from EVs into the home, this will in turn help contribute to lowering the overall demand and costs for bill payers across the country. Now, of course, while the government is actually trying to say, oh, this is brilliant, this is wonderful, or something like that, in truth, it's only going to benefit the people who actually have driveways, isn't it? Because surely they are the only ones who are going to actually be able to connect their EV to their house to use any power from it, which actually sounds a little bit like a false economy in the first place, doesn't it? Because surely you've got to put power in your EV in the first place to then power your home. I'm guessing the whole point of this is so you charge at night and get a cheaper rate and then use your electric from your EV during the day when the rate is slightly higher. But what they can't be considering is, wouldn't this put extra strain on the electric vehicle's battery? Because that's bound to increase the charge cycles that you're going to have to put into your EV just to put back to the house in the first place, isn't it? And therefore degrade your battery even faster, I'm guessing. And of course, not only that, but if you need to take your EV somewhere, like an emergency, or for whatever reason you might not have charged it the night before, surely then you'd be relying on public charges, which are bound to be an even higher rate compared to your overnight rate. So while this does sound absolutely wonderful for the 2% of people who probably use it, I don't think it's going to be a game changer for the majority, even though they're trying to put it that way. Oh, you get an electric car, it's going to be wonderful. When in truth, it might be more of a pain in the bum than the woke snowflake, or one of those eco-protesters out there. But rather than trying to tempt us in this way, shouldn't they actually be giving people more incentives if they want us to go that way to buy an EV in the first place? Like, bring back the government grants. Oh, I don't know, how about not putting a luxury car tax on EVs from 2025? Because let's face it, while there's still a bit of a pain in the bum to charge from what I've heard, unless of course you have a driveway, then to be honest, I don't think they'll be catching on anytime soon. Also, of course, what they're bound to say, you get a wonderful rate for selling your electric from your EV back to the national grid. That rate, I'm guessing, is probably going to bomb faster than Keir Starmer's popularity, because a similar thing happened with solar panels, didn't it? From what I remember, there was adverts everywhere saying you can sell your electric back to the grid, and a few years ago, I think it was, they actually put that rate down from what I can remember. I mean, I don't actually have solar powers because, well, I'm not an idiot, but some people did have, and if I remember rightly, they weren't too happy when the rate plummeted. Motorists have been warned after a major change was made to how drivers pay for parking. Councils are reportedly scrapping traditional pay and display machines as mobile phone operators are switching off the 3G data networks which power these meters. According to the Times, pay-as-you-go parking machines are set to disappear from city streets, leaving drivers forced to use apps to pay for a ticket. Brighton and Hove City Council will reportedly get rid of its parking machines by May the 31st, while London Borough of Bromley will do the same by early April. However, the cost of updating all these machines in Bromley, for example, would cost an eye-watering £1 million. Harrow finished ditching all of its machines in January, and Enfield plans to have all of its meters gone by early April. One benefit, apparently, though, of using these smartphone apps is that it often gives users the ability to add extra time to their stay without having to rush back to their vehicle. There are also up to 30 different smartphone apps that are currently used to pay for parking, including ParkMe, Parkopedia, Just Park and Pay by Phone. But these numerous providers usually each require users to key in their contact information, as well as their card details, which takes much longer than simply inserting coins or a bank card into the machine. Caroline Abrahams, the charity director at Age UK, told The Times The news that we may soon see an end of pay display parking is disastrous for anyone without a smartphone, including millions of older people who are struggling with the shift away from the coin and the slot payment methods they used throughout their lives. Well, to be honest, if anything, I think this is another move to a cashless society, isn't it? Because if everything's done through apps, then they'll say, oh, you don't need cash now, do you? No matter what that's with, whether it be parking or whatever else. And that is bound to impact OAPs, isn't it? Because let's face it, quite a lot of OAPs, through no fault of their own, of course, are not technology minded, and it takes them a little while to get to grips with things. And if anything, a change from one day you've been able to just put money in the machine to the next day being forced to do it by an app is just going to cause nothing but stress for them, isn't it? And anyone else who is not technologically minded. Personally, I can't see why they can't have both machines side by side and give people the choice. And yes, I know they say it's because, oh, we need to switch off 3G, we need to switch it off. But why do you need 3G for these machines? Surely, we obviously never had 3G during the olden days, where presumably you could just put money in the machine and just give you a time to return back to your vehicle, and the parking attendant or traffic warden or whatever look at the time and think, oh, you stayed a bit too long, I'll give you a ticket because I'm an a-hole, or whatever. And speaking of which, they try to say it's a benefit that you can up your stay if you need to stay a bit longer, but rather than doing that, how about giving people a bit more of a grace period, which I'm sure was probably announced a little while ago. No doubt they try to use this to get away from being able to do that in the first place, which is surely another kick in the gonads for us motorists, isn't it? And the high costs for doing this in general, £1 million, it just shows you how much money the council must make from parking and everything else they do in the first place. If they can presumably afford just to replace all meters, and it's not going to save any money, is it? Because they're bound to need traffic wardens or park attendants still to go around and check the tickets, aren't they? Unless maybe, of course, they'll run everything by cameras, and we all know how that turns out, don't we? And of course, if you turned up to these new wonderful car parking machines with a dead phone battery because for whatever reason you've forgotten your phone charging cable and therefore couldn't charge it up in your car, I guess you're a bit screwed and would have to find alternative parking, wouldn't you? But then what do you do if all parking where you need to go is run by these machines? I guess that leaves you a bit screwed, doesn't it? Not to mention, of course, the big elephant in the room of once again giving another company our details. Not only, of course, will we have to put in our registration, but also surely when registering for the app, they're going to want your name, your date of birth maybe. Of course, they may not do, but they might do. Your address, and whatever other details that they say they need. When in truth, they probably just want to sell those details for, I don't know, advertising or whatever else to get more money coming in for them. It's just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? A businessman who evaded hundreds of thousands of pounds in tax used the money to buy expensive cars, horses, and a luxury cottage. Ben Richardson has been sentenced to just 6 years in prison for defrauding a taxman of more than £2 million. The 47-year-old from Deal in Kent ran a series of failing construction companies in 9 years and blamed his accountant for their errors when they were discovered. Using the cash he illegally saved from cheating on VAT returns and not paying tax, Richardson funded a lavish lifestyle which included buying a house for more than £200,000 between October 2010 and July 2019. He ran 4 companies named SPR UK, SPR Modular, Lex Industries and Merrygate Enterprise Limited, all involved in the sale of modular buildings to construction sites, and they were each used in various ways to defraud the HMRC. Richardson admitted to multiple tax evasion offences, fraudulently evading tax income and national insurance contributions. He also pleaded guilty for failing to disclose construction industry scheme returns, which resulted in an additional sum of nearly £380,000. Now, of course, while some are bound to say, well, 6 years in prison, he got his punishment, what's the problem? In truth, he's only going to serve half of that, isn't he? Before he's presumably on licence on parole. So, if anything, he's getting 3 years actually behind bars for fraudulently getting £2 million. Therefore, it's surely like getting paid £666,000 per year for just spending a bit of time in prison. This is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know who that judge is, but he seriously needs to go back to, I don't know, learn a bit about the law maybe, and actually increase people's sentences. If I was a judge, I would sort this crap out once and for all. I would say that if you defraud any money or do a horrible crime, then you'll instantly get from 15 years in prison. And worse crimes will obviously be much more. Because let's face it, people need an actual deterrent, rather than just spending presumably half of your sentence behind bars and the other half on parole. And unfortunately, the article doesn't say if he's made to pay it back or not. But But if he was made to pay it back, which to be honest I think he should have been, he should be made to pay that back plus interest, and why not an extra £1 million for being a bit of a penis. But of course it always just seems, doesn't it, that the rich people or famous celebrities just seem to get away with everything or get light sentences when everyone else appears to be treated much harsher. Which, don't get me wrong, if people do crimes, then they should be given long sentences in general, because at the end of the day they shouldn't have committed whatever crime that was, and that goes for famous people, rich people, as well as normal everyday people. Although yes, admittedly, with having all that money, he was probably bound to afford a really good lawyer, wasn't he? Unless of course it was the same Durham constabulary who investigated something like Keir Starmer's curry night all that time ago. Another person who, let's face it, unfortunately recently got his freedom was Gary Glitter, but in this video it looks like he actually done us all a favour by doing something really stupid to send him right back to prison. Anyway, subscribe for more and I'll see you in the next one.